What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 11 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Thank you for everyone that has shown their support. It means a lot. And for those of you that might be new to the website, all the details in the description. But go ahead, join the free newsletter, become a member of the ADP community, and get early access to these NFL game breakdowns, exclusive content. Also, become a member and get personalized fantasy advice throughout the season from yours truly at any point in time. So check all of that out. But for now, let's get right into it. Kicking things off on Thursday Night Football, we've got a divisional clash between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. The Steelers at 5-4, coming off a really nice victory over the Rams, where their defense starred yet again and got them that victory. For the Browns, 3-6, coming off a victory as well over the Buffalo Bills. The defense had a decent performance, but it was more so a great performance from Jarvis Landry, a nice little boost from Kareem Hunt as he saw his first game action of the year, and that yielded a close, hard-fought victory for Cleveland. But the question becomes, will they be able to duplicate those efforts? Because unfortunately, more often than not, that has not been the case, as they've been one of the most inconsistent teams in this season. Now, they've got a tall task versus this Pittsburgh Steelers squad that has been on a little bit of a roll here, as they know the formula that works for them, and that is run the football and play great defense. Now, you could argue that they've been successful defensively because they've gone up against subpar competition, subpar offenses. Well, hell, the Browns could very well fall under that category if you think about it. Their offensive line has stunk all year long. Baker Mayfield has held on to the football for too long. He's turnover prone. And even though they are, without a question, the more talented team, they've got more playmakers. That hasn't resulted in victories, as we've seen. Now, I will say, I do think the addition of Kareem Hunt, the return, does help this offense. I've been saying it since the start of the season. To me, he is the better running back than Nick Chubb, but I don't think the Browns will go ahead and feature him in this offense. I think they will use him mostly as a third down back, which is unfortunate because I do think he makes that offense a little bit more dangerous. Now, even though the Steelers have a big deficiency at the quarterback position, and that's how they've been winning these games, by limiting what Mason Rudolph has to do. And even though Baker Mayfield does have, I would say, as bad as he has played this season long, a decisive advantage over Baker Mayfield, I'm still going to go with the Steelers here. I think this will be a lower scoring game. It's a divisional clash as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like 17-14, 19-17. But I'm going to go with the team with a better defense. I'm going to go with the team with a better offensive line. And something I don't usually point to, but I'm going to go with the team with the better coaching. Mike Tomlin over Kitchens every single day of the week. I'm taking the Steelers on the road here in what bettors actually consider a upset, as the Browns are minus 2.5 point favorites. Now, don't get me wrong. I could, again, see the Browns winning, because if they do happen to come out fast and get up to a 7-0, 10-0, 13-0 lead, then the Steelers do have to rely on Mason Rudolph, and that's where things could get bad. So for that reason, I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns win, but I'm going to go with the Steelers. I think more so they're the more complete team than the Browns. They've got the better coaching as well on their side. So give me the Steelers on the road outright, and also on the spread, as the Browns are favored there. Next, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. The Falcons 2-7, coming off one of the biggest upsets of the year last week, as they took down the Saints in New Orleans in a game that wasn't all that close. They shut down that offense of the Saints, and Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman, they had nice games as well. Unfortunately for the Falcons, they come out of that game with a couple of losses offensively. Devonta Freeman and Austin Hooper won't be available in Week 11. For the Panthers, they're 5-4, coming off a loss, tough one, versus the Green Bay Packers. They had a chance to tie it late. Obviously, they also had to get the 2-point conversion to force overtime, but great effort nonetheless. Win or lose, I will say this. I think this was the most impressive game that Kyle Allen has played all season long, when you consider on the road in Lambeau versus Rodgers in a game they were down in the snow. I actually think he did really good. The problem for the Panthers offense and for Kyle Allen is that he's still a young quarterback and he continues to struggle with turnovers. And that could potentially be the reason why the Panthers lose this game. Now, I will say, in these NFC South clashes, we've repeated this nonstop. You throw out the record no matter what, especially when the Falcons are involved with Matt Ryan under center and all the weapons that he has. This Panthers defense can't stop the run, so even though Brian Hill is going to be the running back, he could very well have a huge day. And Matt Ryan has also owned this Panthers defense for a long time. Don't be surprised if he does it again here. Now, I do think this is a series that probably gets split between these two teams, so I'm going to give the slight advantage to the Panthers at home and say they win this home game and probably lose when they have to go to Atlanta. But on the spread here, folks, the Panthers at -5.5, that is way too high. No chance, I think, if you're taking the Panthers here outright, can you be as confident with them on the spread? I think the Falcons keep this game close throughout. In fact, I believe both teams will have a chance to win this game late in the fourth quarter. Now, if I had to give you guys a prediction score-wise, I think either the Panthers win it like by 2-3 points or the Falcons blow out the Panthers, because the Panthers can be beat defensively, like we said. And even though the Falcons defense had a great week in week 10, it probably is an outlier. So there is the potential of a high-scoring affair here. Do keep that in mind. But again, I'm leaning Panthers get this victory outright. On the spread, though, very confident the Falcons will get it done there. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they get the upset outright as well. But for now, Panthers outright and the Falcons on the spread. Continuing on with our third straight divisional clash, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. The Bills 6-3, tough loss versus the Cleveland Browns. The type of loss that makes you question their legitimacy and their resume moving forward. No doubt. It's a good thing they are in the weak AFC, considering the playoff picture and the wild card situation. Then the Miami Dolphins, 2-7. 2 wins in a row. Who would have thought? Fitzmagic is well and alive. Obviously, they got some help with Jacoby Brissett not playing for the Colts and with Vinatieri continuing to see struggles in the kicking game. The question is now for Miami fans, can you make it 3 in a row? But maybe we should be asking, do you want to make it 3 in a row? Because you continue to get some of these what amount to meaningless victories. You're really going to cost yourself in the draft. And I do think some people in Miami, in that front office, on that team, are going to realize that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Miami Dolphins come out a little bit flat in this game. Maybe Fitzmagic kind of ends here as well. I just think there's no way the Miami Dolphins continue to get these victories. Getting a franchise quarterback in next year's draft just means way too much for them. And the competition is fierce right now with some garbage teams this year. So I think Buffalo comes out and gets a decisive victory here. Now, the last time these two teams played, Miami kind of gave Buffalo a scare, and Buffalo had to work for that victory, but they still won by about 10 points. The spread here is +5.5 for the Dolphins. I think it's a combination of what we saw from Buffalo last week and with the Dolphins being on a win streak, but I think the Bills can go ahead, get this victory, and cover the spread. I believe Josh Allen is going to have a big game. I'm also looking at the wide receivers for Buffalo. Last time these two teams played, John Brown had a pretty good game. Cole Beasley will be a factor as well. Look for the rushing attack to have a good outing. And again, even though the Miami offense has been getting it done with Fitzpatrick under center, I trust this Bills defense way more than I trust that of the Miami Dolphins. Even with the Bills being on the road, I'm taking Buffalo all day long. Give me them outright. Give me them on the spread as well. I think they win by at least a touchdown. Next, we've got the Dallas Cowboys at the Detroit Lions. The Cowboys 5-4. Tough loss versus the Vikings last week, but they did look impressive. Unfortunately, they couldn't get their most important weapon going in that game in Ezekiel Elliott, as the Vikings did a great job in stopping him. While the Detroit Lions 3-5-1. Yet another close loss versus the Chicago Bears. But especially after the Matthew Stafford news came out. We pretty much knew that that's how that game was going to go. In fact, as soon as we heard that Matthew Stafford had been ruled out early in the weekend, we said, go ahead and pick the Chicago Bears as a lock for Week 10. That's exactly what happened. Now, right at this point in time, the quarterback situation a little bit up in the air again, but I'm guessing that Jeff Driscoll is going to make a second straight start in a row. For God's sakes, Matthew Stafford has got a broken back here, folks. As much as he wants to play, I think you got to be careful with him. And even though Driscoll did some nice things versus the Bears, you saw very well why he is a backup. Now, he wasn't helped by some important drops by guys like Kenny Golladay in that game. But as long as Jeff Driscoll is under center for the Lions, I feel extremely comfortable going with the Dallas Cowboys. Up until this point, Stafford hasn't practiced. And if I had to lean one way or the other, I'm saying that he won't play in Week 11. So to me, the Cowboys become a lock from that perspective. Obviously, if he does suit up, then the conversation becomes a different one. And I look at the Lions as having a much better chance to get that victory at home. But I still like the Dallas Cowboys, even if Driscoll plays or Stafford plays. To me, right now, they're the healthier team. Stafford, if he does suit up, he won't be 100%. I think that this entire offense will have a huge game. This defense for the Lions has really struggled, and after the down performance that Zeke had last week, I think he absolutely runs wild on the Lions. I think Dak Prescott will have a good game. Michael Gallup, Witten, Amari Cooper. So I see a big game here for the Dallas Cowboys offense and also for the defense if Driscoll is the starter. So give me the Cowboys outright on the spread, the Lions plus 4.5. That spread should be higher. It should be like at plus 7.5, plus 8 if Driscoll is under center. So I'm taking the Cowboys there as well. Next, we've got the Denver Broncos at the Minnesota Vikings. The Broncos at 3-6 coming off the bye week, while the Minnesota Vikings at 7-3, like we mentioned, took care of business versus the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night. Great win for them as they shut down Zeke and had their own feature running back in Dalvin Cook be the star of the show yet again as he continues to dominate this season. Now, the last time we saw the Broncos play, they actually were victorious with Brandon Allen under center in his first start of the season as Joe Flacco continues to rehab from injury. But that was versus the Cleveland Browns. And this Minnesota Vikings defense and this Minnesota Vikings team in general is in a whole nother level than that of the Browns. So I think this is going to be a long day for Allen. I really like the Vikings team here to dominate from start to finish. I don't necessarily think it'll be a blowout just because if you look at the games the Broncos have been a part of, none have really been a blowout or double-digit losses other than the game versus the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers. But versus the Packers, I believe it was an 11-point loss, and the spread here at minus 10.5, so it's right there. And Vic Fangio does know the NFC North pretty well, does know the Vikings, so I think he's going to go ahead and keep the Broncos in this game to some extent. But at the end of the day, I just don't think Brendan Allen is going to be able to do enough versus this Vikings defense. I think the Vikings proved last week that they can stop a guy like Ezekiel Elliott. They sure as hell can stop Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman. And if Brendan Allen has to throw the football to beat the Vikings, I think that's exactly what they want him to do. So from that perspective, it's going to be a long day. Again, maybe they hang in there just because in terms of matchups, this could be a tough one for Kirk Cousins. But we've seen even when that happens, Dalvin Cook can go ahead and shoulder the load. Adam Thielen probably won't play again here. But even if he doesn't, we saw the Vikings be victorious last week. So I'm not too worried about that. The defense, especially in the secondary for the Broncos, has been good. Again, another sign that we could see some pedestrian numbers from Kirk Cousins here. But if he does, have a pretty successful day, this could turn into a blowout. Still, I'm going to go ahead and lean more so on the side of caution and say the Broncos are going to cover the spread with that minus 10.5 number for the Vikings. But outright, the Vikings for sure, one of our locks of the week. Next, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Indianapolis Colts. The Jaguars at 4-5, the Colts at 5-4. The Jaguars coming off of the bye week, while the Colts, tough loss versus the Miami Dolphins, embarrassing loss. But look, they get somewhat of a pass as Brian Hoyer was under center. But unfortunately, the big storyline continues to be here. Every other week, Adam Vinatieri, some kicking struggles that are costing the Colts victories. And in an AFC that, at this point everyone has a chance, you should take every victory you can get, especially when you're in the same division as Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. But even with all that said, I think this is probably one of the toughest games to predict here because the Jaguars, the big storyline, they get Nick Foles back. For the Colts, big storyline, they going to get Jacoby Brissett back. So both teams are getting starting quarterbacks returning. Now, for the Jaguars, we haven't really seen Nick Foles since the start of the season, so is he going to be a little bit rusty? That's very possible. How much can you trust this offense? Is there going to be the same type of chemistry with guys that have been doing really well, like a DJ Shark? We don't know. But offensively, I actually like the Jacksonville Jaguars a little bit more so. Defensively, I do think the Jaguars have a little bit more talent as well. I think that this is going to be a series that gets split. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the home team here, give them the slight advantage. And I'm going to say that at the more important position, they've got the edge, that being the quarterback position. Until I see Nick Foles come back and, really look like the guy that the Jaguars gave all that money to this offseason, I'm going to hold off on taking the Jaguars outright at least. I do think it's a smart here if you go one way or the other with your pick outright. I'm going with the Colts outright to potentially go the other way with the spread pick. The Colts at -2.5. It's a low spread, which kind of makes it difficult to go with the Jaguars. But just because I think this game could be a coin flip, both teams kind of want to do the same thing. Rush the football, have game-managing quarterback play, and good defense that, bends but doesn't break. But right now, the Jaguars are a little bit more healthy. So I'm hedging my bets here a little bit. I'm taking the Colts outright, but the Jaguars on the spread. Next, we've got the New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another NFC South clash. The Saints 7-2, suffering that loss versus the Atlanta Falcons. But I do think it was one of those trap games, kind of a fluke loss, if you will, similar to what we saw with the Green Bay Packers versus the LA Chargers. Now, the Bucs, 3-6, coming off a hard-fought victory over the Arizona Cardinals. High-scoring affair that was close, like we said it would be, but ultimately the Buccaneers had some more firepower, had a better defensive effort, and got it done. Now, at home, a lot of people are picking the Bucs as a trendy selection here to potentially keep it close for Jameis Winston to have a big day. But I just think there is no way this Saints team doesn't respond after the type of loss that they had last week where they were dominated versus a Buccaneers defense that just gave up all those points versus Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. I think Drew Brees, I think Michael Thomas, I think Alvin Kamara will all bounce back and have huge days. Not that Michael Thomas really had a tough day. He was pretty much the only offensive piece along with Jared Cook that did really well. But defensively here, the big storyline is Marshawn Lattimore probably won't suit up. That's why a lot of people are saying that the Bucs could surprise the Saints and make this very high scoring and make it somewhat close, because the last time Lattimore matched up versus the Bucs, he blanked Mike Evans. Mike Evans didn't have a single catch in that game, and we obviously know how important Evans is to this offense. So that is a big benefit to the Bucs. Since then, they've also seemed to commit to a running back, which is nice. But ultimately, this all boils down to Jameis versus Drew Brees. No Marshawn Lattimore, I understand that. That helps the Bucs. But Drew Brees is so much smarter with the football than Jameis Winston. I realize Winston could, put up stats with the best of them, but he also struggles mightily with turnovers. He has been a turnover machine these last few weeks, again versus the Arizona Cardinals in Week 10. and I think we're going to see that be the big difference here. I do think the Saints will keep it close with the Bucks for the majority of the game, but I do think then we're going to see Jameis Winston try and make a little bit too much happen, and that'll be the difference. And I think the Saints pull away here. So I'm going with the Saints outright, absolutely. And then on the spread at +5.5. It's close to a touchdown, but not quite. I think the Saints can go ahead and get this victory there as well as they pull away late. Continuing on, we have got the New York Jets at the Washington Redskins. The Jets beating the New York Giants last week as the defense took over the turnover-prone Daniel Jones. Then the Washington Redskins at 1-8, coming off of the bye week. They get Darius Geis back in this game. That'll be nice for them. But the bigger storyline here is Dwayne Haskins will be the starter for the remainder of the season. And I'm sorry, but as much as the Jets have struggled so far, especially Sam Darnold, I still have way more faith in him than Dwayne Haskins. I realize Washington has to see what it has in Haskins. That makes sense. I don't blame them for making this move. But I think we all know that Case Keenum is the best quarterback on this roster, and he gives this team the best chance to win, and he optimizes this offense. So for that reason, I think we're going to see a lot of mistakes from Dwayne Haskins. I think the Jets have shown they've got some players that can capitalize on these mistakes, guys like Jamal Adams, especially in the secondary. I'm taking the Jets here, even though it's on the road. I like them to win this game. For the Redskins, the game plan will probably be to control the pace of play via Adrian Peterson and Darius Geis, and then, as much as they can, limit Sam Darnold, which is a possibility. Don't get me wrong. He's very hot and cold, but I'll take him and all those offensive pieces that the Jets have over the offense of the Washington Redskins as long as it's being led by Dwayne Haskins. I give the slight edge to the Jets defense as well. So give me the Jets outright. On the spread, the Redskins are favored at -1.5. Probably does have something to do with the fact that they are at home. I think the spread would probably be the exact opposite if this was in New York. But since I like the Jets outright, I'm also taking them on the spread. Continuing on, we have got the Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans 6-3 coming off the bye week, while the Baltimore Ravens 7-2 absolutely slaughtered the Cincinnati Bengals last week. But in terms of this matchup, it is all about Deshaun Watson versus Lamar Jackson. Two MVP candidates, and whoever wins will probably leapfrog the other in that conversation. Now, Lamar Jackson has probably been more impressive because of what he does week in and week out with his legs, and some of the wins that he has got, some of those highlight plays that he showcases as well. Just look at the spin move he put on the Bengals last week. But I still think Deshaun Watson is the better quarterback. Deshaun Watson is the more accurate passer. He's just as, dynamic as Lamar Jackson. He's got that escapability factor. And offensively, he does have more playmakers. Look at DeAndre Hopkins. Look at the potential return of Will Fuller as well. That will be a big help. But, on the other side, you've got an improved Baltimore defense, especially in the secondary. So that gives them a little bit of a boost there. But either way, I think this will be a high-scoring affair. The Houston defense is one that can be taken advantage of. Lamar Jackson will probably continue to do his thing, not only on the ground, but also have some success on the air. I look for some of those big plays to guys like Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews as well, the two most reliable weapons on that offense. But Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to do his thing. I think he's going to sling it around. I think he's going to keep the Texans in the game and give them a chance to win, which is obviously the most important thing. But at the end of the day, I give the ever so slight edge to the Baltimore Ravens. And I know I like Deshaun Watson more in this game. I think he's more talented. I think he's further along. I think he's eventually what Lamar Jackson has to become. But right now, the Texans just aren't as complete of a team as that of the Baltimore Ravens. They have way too many issues on the defense. That offensive line from time to time also struggles, while the Ravens are better in both those departments. So I'm going to give the edge to the Ravens here in a very tight, high-scoring game. I think they edge out the Houston Texans, probably in a game that might be decided by a field goal late. They've also got one of the most clutch kickers in the NFL in Justin Tucker, so if it does come down to that, I feel pretty confident with the Ravens there. On the spread, however, -4.5, I think it'll be close, but I don't see the Ravens winning by more than 3 points. So for that reason, I'm giving the edge to the Texans on the spread and taking them there. Next, we've got the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers. The Cardinals 3-6-1 coming off that loss versus the Bucs. Well, the 49ers coming off their own loss. In fact, the first loss of the season, undefeated no more, in that overtime thriller versus the Seattle Seahawks. They are now 8-1. But if you look back 2 weeks ago, that performance versus the Cardinals that they had maybe kind of foreshadowed this last loss they had in week 10, as the Cardinals really gave the 49ers a scare. And you could argue if Kyler Murray had one last possession with a decent amount of time, that the Cardinals could have taken the 49ers to overtime or maybe even won that game 2 weeks ago. But the point of the story being here, the Cardinals are getting slightly better. Kyler Murray getting more and more comfortable. They're doing their thing offensively. They've got the weapons. Christian Kirk returning. He was huge last week, but again, that was versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is ultimately the difference here. The San Francisco defense is elite. We saw them make plenty of plays, even versus Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. Ultimately, they did get outplayed, but I think they will bounce back here. I think they're going to bounce back as an entire team offensively. On top of that, now, unfavorably for them, George Kittle probably going to miss this game. Breida, questionable. Emmanuel Sanders, questionable. So that does take a hit for them offensively. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to look to some of his other options, guys like Coleman, guys like Mostert, guys like Deebo Samuel. So it's not going to be as easy for them offensively, which is actually a reason why I do think the Cardinals have a very real chance to cover in this game. The spread is very high, -13.5. Again, it was only 2 weeks ago where we saw these two teams face off, and it was a 3-4 point type of difference in the final score. This game obviously is in San Francisco, so that is a difference. But these contests, again, usually close. The Cardinals quietly getting better offensively. I do think the 49ers will win. It very well could be by double digits, but I don't think it's going to be by 14 points. I think it's closer to 10, 11, 12 points. So for that reason, and because the Cardinals a little bit healthier, excluding their running back position, but guys like Kenyon Drake have gotten it done in the meantime, I think they keep pace with the 49ers and with the abilities that a guy like Kyler Murray has, the dual threat that he possesses. So even though I like the 49ers outright, I am taking the Cardinals on the spread. Next, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Oakland Raiders. The Bengals 0-9, winless, got absolutely demoralized, embarrassed versus the Baltimore Ravens last week. The Raiders 5-4, great victory over the LA Chargers, really impressive. The defense had a pretty nice day. Derek Carr continues to have quietly pretty good games, and the offense producing with some nice weapons in Waller, in Josh Jacobs, in Tyrell Williams. And now they get probably their easiest task of the season, as this one is one of the most straightforward games of the week. The Bengals, with Ryan Finley under center, are a threat to no one. That offensive line is bad. Joe Mixon, against all odds, had a pretty good game last week. That's pretty much the only silver lining for the Bengals. A.J. Green probably won't be back this season as he continues to have setback after setback. And Oakland at home should easily get this win. With Ryan Finley under center, this Bengals team pretty much has no chance against anyone. Andy Dalton is the best bet they have. I realize they probably won't re-sign him this offseason, so they want to see what they have in some of these other guys. But again, as long as Andy Dalton is not under center for the Bengals, they pretty much have no chance against anyone. And the Raiders have been better than expected this year, so I like them to win this game pretty easily. I think that entire offense will have a great game, especially a guy like Josh Jacobs, who the game script is absolutely perfect for. The Raiders come out to a lead, and then he just takes over. I think the Raiders defense could potentially have a nice day as well. Give me the Raiders, no questions about it, at home outright. On the spread, minus 10.5. I'll take the over. It's a high spread, but I think the Raiders can cover. Finley absolutely going to get demoralized if last week was any indication. Give me the Raiders all the way. Next, we've got the New England Patriots at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Patriots 8-1, the Eagles 5-4. Both these teams coming off the bye week. And unfortunately for Philly, they've got to face the Patriots, who have had 2 weeks to stew over the loss they suffered versus the Baltimore Ravens. And similar to the Saints, I just don't see the Patriots, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, suffering 2 straight losses in a row. I realize this is going to be a difficult environment to play in Philadelphia versus an Eagles team that has somewhat underperformed, but they are still very talented with Carson Wentz under center. He gives them a chance to beat anyone. You know, it's not a fluke that they beat the Packers earlier this year. They can go ahead and have success, but I just think the Patriots right now are too much to handle for a big portion of teams in the NFL. And Carson Wentz in this offense just isn't the same type of challenge as what Lamar Jackson was. A big reason why probably the Patriots struggled is because what Lamar Jackson can do as a pure rusher, and I think those days are long gone for Carson Wentz. He is more accurate, but the Patriots defense, I think, will go ahead and respond accordingly. And then for Tom Brady, he has a great matchup versus the Philadelphia secondary that struggled all year long. I think he's going to have a pretty good day along with Julian Edelman, Sanu, Philip Dorsett. So it might not be through the rushing attack, but I think the Patriots still on the road win this game. Now, I do think the Eagles will keep it competitive, you know, keep this between a touchdown type of score difference, 6 to 7 points. So I don't think the Patriots are going to necessarily blow out the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think they can go ahead and win by 4 or 5 points, which the spread right now is plus 3.5 for the Eagles. I'm surprised it's not a little bit higher, but I'm going to go with the Patriots outright. To me right now, they are just more well-balanced. Losing Deshaun Jackson for Philadelphia also hurts, and defensively especially, I think the Patriots from the D-line to the secondary don't have as many holes as the Eagles. So give me the Patriots in a hard-fought victory to go ahead and get back to their winning ways behind a great performance from one Tom Brady. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we've got the Chicago Bears at the LA Rams, a matchup between two of the most disappointing teams in the NFL compared to their expectations from last year. The Bears, look, they're coming off a win, but it was versus the Matthew Stafford-less Detroit Lions. How confident do you actually feel in saying that the Bears would have been victorious over Detroit if Stafford actually played? I don't feel all that comfortable in saying that because even versus that Detroit defense, the Bears offense didn't look all that great. You know, if you take away 3 drives by Mitch Trubisky, then the LA Rams, they're 5-4. They're coming off a tough loss versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I do think they have a very good chance to bounce back. However, I will say if there were ever a time to play the LA Rams, it would be right now. And the Bears also have an equally good chance of winning this game because the Rams absolutely decimated on the offensive line. Their quarterback not playing up to expectations. Stop me if you've heard this before, but the offense isn't hitting on all cylinders like last year. Pretty much the exact same situation with the Chicago Bears. And the Rams, Brendan Cooks is not going to be available. Will they or won't they feed Gurley? We've seen that this offense, to some extent, has to run through him, and the usage just has not been there. I mean, right now, the Rams are most dangerous defensively, similar to the Bears. The defense has been keeping them in a lot of games. Aaron Donald and guys like Jalen Ramsey, and I think that'll be the case here again. I think this could be one of the lowest scoring games this week. I imagine something, 17-14, 19-16. I'm going to give the edge to the Rams, the home team. Now, I wouldn't be shocked, again, if the Bears win. But the reason I do like the Rams a little bit more so is because they still have the better offense, in my opinion. Jared Goff, as much as he has struggled, at least we've seen more outings from him where he has looked impressive than Mitchell Trubisky. So I'll give the edge to the Rams here. I think it's going to be tight. I think both teams are going to have a chance to win. The Rams have the better, kicker at this point in time, so maybe another reason to like them in a close contest. But I think Aaron Donald is going to wreak havoc on Mitch Trubisky. I think Jalen Ramsey is going to get his as well. He's going to shut down their best weapon, Allen Robinson. So give me the Rams at home to win this game. However, on the spread, -6.5 for the Rams. That is way too high in my opinion. I think if you're looking for a spread pick to bet on, this is one of the locks of the week. The Chicago Bears on the spread in a game they could very well win here are almost a lock in my eyes. For what it's worth, whatever team loses here is probably going to be eliminated from the playoffs, even though neither one of these teams right now looks like they're headed that way. Third place in their respective divisions. Rams outright, but the Bears 100% on the spread. And finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we have got the Kansas City Chiefs at the LA Chargers. Incredibly important divisional game here. Both these teams coming off of losses, and the separation in the division not all that much, as the Chiefs haven't been as dominant as last year. The Chiefs 6-4, absolutely astounding loss to the Tennessee Titans last week, but the defense couldn't stop anyone. And then the Chargers, they're 4-6. Kind of a disappointing loss versus the Raiders last week, as Phillip Rivers really struggled with turnovers. Now, however, in this matchup, I think that this will be very high scoring considering the Chiefs' defense. And even though the Chargers do have the better defense, no doubt here, we've seen that Mahomes and that Chiefs offense can go ahead and put up points versus anyone. I think that'll be the case. I wouldn't be surprised if Phillip Rivers absolutely slings it here, maybe 50 pass attempts, because the Chiefs, they're going to score points, and the Chargers are going to have to hang in there. They're going to have to, at some point, abandon maybe even the rushing attack and just absolutely air it out. I think we're going to see big games from those pass catchers, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry. But I do think it'll be close throughout. I think both teams will keep it respectable heading into the fourth quarter. And to me, this game has 3-point margin of victory written all over it. Also, a little bit of a boost for the Chargers having this game in LA, even though right now that's not much of a home field advantage for the Chargers. But I like the Chargers to hang in there, but I will go with the Chiefs quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who looked like his old, absolutely dominant self pretty much since he stepped back on the football field in Week 10. Right now, I think he's the less turnover-prone quarterback, so he has that going for him. I like the Chiefs special teams as well if it does come down to that. So I'm going to take the Chiefs on the road to win outright, but on the spread, that half a point I think makes a huge difference. Bettors also kind of the same thought that this could come down to a field goal, and I'm going to take the Chargers on the spread, actually. Even though I like the Chiefs outright, I think the Chargers keep it close. This is a divisional contest. These two teams know each other. I think the Chargers make the Chiefs work for it, but ultimately come up just short, as unfortunately has been their motto for the majority of this season. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, we start with Buffalo at Miami. Give me the Bills all day here. As nice as the 2-win streak has been for the Dolphins, at some point you have to realize these are meaningless wins for the Dolphins. They're giving up way too much draft capital, and they have to get a franchise difference maker at the quarterback position. Buffalo should get this victory. Miami can't really stop anyone on defense. I think Josh Allen has a rebound performance here. Give me the Bills. Next, Dallas at Detroit. In large part, this is predicated on Matthew Stafford not playing, but even if he does suit up, I don't think he will be at 100%. This Detroit defense has struggled as of late. Zeke, Dak, Amari Cooper should all eat in this matchup. Next, Denver at Minnesota. Give me the Vikings at home. With that great defense that absolutely shut down Zeke last week, I think they can do the same versus the Broncos. I realized the last time we saw the Broncos play, they were victorious versus the Browns, but this Minnesota Vikings team is on a whole nother level. They beat the backup in Denver. Next, New Orleans at Tampa Bay. And even though this is a divisional clash, and even though Marshawn Lattimore won't play in this game, I don't see the Saints losing 2 in a row. This Bucs defense can be had. I think the Saints offense bounces back, and at the end of the day, Breeze versus Winston. Winston is more turnover-prone, edge to the Saints. And finally, Cincinnati at Oakland. There's a reason why the Bengals are winless. And right now, with Ryan Finley under center, as they continue to ignore Andy Dalton, who gives them the best chance to win, they're going to continue to lose. I like the Raiders to easily get this victory. So with that, we wrap up our Week 11 breakdown. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree with these picks, along with any other questions you guys might have? And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Get these breakdowns early. Get that exclusive content by joining the free newsletter. Also, check it out. Become a member and get personalized fantasy advice to dominate the rest of your fantasy season at all times from yours truly. All the details in the description. But for now, I'll see you guys in future videos.